So the point of this section is to show you, to start off with whole numbers, and then from whole numbers, transition into division with fractions, to show you how the principle is still the same as we move from whole numbers to fractions. And then we're also trying to give support for another approach which has become more common in dividing fractions, which is the common denominator approach. All right, so it is now becoming a little bit more popular to teach division of fractions by getting a common denominator, right? And you might say, well, wait a minute, you know, when we studied for basic skills, we got common denominators to add and subtract fractions, never to divide. All right, but let me show you how a lot of these problems boil down to getting a common denominator and changing to two fractions where the denominator is common, and then you're just dividing the numerators. All right, and that's what the common denominator approach to division of fractions looks like. It boils down to then a quotient of the numerators. So anyway, please start on page 10 of your handout. I realize they may have been flip-flopped in the packet, so make sure you're looking at page 10 where you start with 10 cookies over here. All right, and the way that this handout works is over on this side here, they are showing you the serving size. Okay, and then we are looking at how many servings we can make. So that will be the quotient. Take the serving size, divide it up by what amounts to, or I'm sorry, let me say that again. Take the number of cookies, divide it up by the serving size. That tells you how many servings you have. Okay, so if we start with 10 cookies, all right, and each cookie, a whole cookie, is a serving size, how many can I make from 10 cookies? All right, so as I said, take the number of cookies, and every time we do a problem, we're going to write the number sentence that goes with it. So we start very easy because we're going to build from simple into more abstract. All right, so we take the number of cookies. A whole serving is 5 cookies, pretty large serving. And how many servings of cookies do we have? Okay, we can see we're taking this and dividing it. Okay, so we would have 2 servings of cookies. Okay, now a serving is 3 cookies, and we start with 5. Okay, so we have to do 5 divided by 3. Okay, so we're using the measurement subtractive approach here, right? I measure off 3 cookies. All right, so there's a serving. And then I have to say, okay, then what do I have left, right? I have 2 cookies left, so I got a full serving. Now, what fraction of a serving is left? What fraction of a serving is 2 cookies, right? So if a serving is 3, this, you know, this is my 1 whole. I'm gonna just put 1 W for 1 whole. That's my 1 whole, so I have 1 2/3 of a serving. Okay, suppose a serving is 1 cookie. All right, this one is awfully easy, right? This is showing you that 5 divided by 1 is 5. Nobody's having trouble with this one, right? But then this is going to lead us into, well, what if a serving is a fraction of a cookie? Okay, so what if I have 5 cookies, but this time the serving is a half a cookie? All right, so I have to do 5 divided by a half. So if I thought of the measurement subtractive concept of division, how many halves can I measure off of 5? Right? And the number of halves that get measured off of 5 is 10. All right, and so there is certainly support for the idea that we would flip the second fraction and multiply. Okay, we can see that this number is being multiplied by the second divisor. Okay, so very similar concept in number 5. All right, so you try 5. Okay, so I'm measuring off a quarter, measuring off a quarter. Well, every single one of these is 4 quarters. Okay, so therefore, I have 5 of these groups of 4, right, to get 20. Okay, and I filled in some of my boxes earlier so that I wouldn't take so much time just drawing those out. Okay, so let's look at this example. Suppose a serving is 3/4 of a cookie. How many servings can I make from 5 cookies? Okay, so I'm doing 5 divided by 3/4. So let me measure off 3/4, measure off 3/4. So every time I circle in blue, that's a serving. Ah, geez. There's a serving, there's one, there's one, there's one. Okay, so a serving is 3/4, right? I can see that over here. This is a serving. 3/4. Notice what I have left. A lot of people incorrectly try to say that the answer is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6.5, right? Because they see a half a cookie sitting there, right? So they try to say this answer is 3.5, okay? But, or I'm sorry, 6.5, okay? But really, what I have here is I have 2 pieces when 3 pieces is a whole. Okay, so let me open up a text box and let me write some things down to help you really see and understand what's happening in this problem. Okay, so 3 pieces is 1 whole, okay, because it all comes back to the whole. We really hammered on that point last week. Is 1 whole serving. I'm sorry, let me take the comma out. 1 whole serving, comma. So 2 pieces left is 2 out of the 3 I need to make a serving. Okay, so pause the video and write that down. Okay, so 3 pieces is the serving. I'm left with 2 out of the 3 I need. All right, so that's why the answer is 6 2/3. It's not 6.5. Okay, so again, pause the video and you try this one. So again, it looks like 7 1/3, right? Because you do have a third of a cookie left. Okay, but remember that a third of a cookie, if I come over here and look at this, a third of a cookie is half of a serving. So let me write that down again. A third of a cookie is a half of a serving. Okay, so I end up getting here 7.5. Okay, so notice what I've done is I've created 15 pieces here, right? And then I take the 15 pieces and I divide it up into how many halves I would have. How many twos? Not how many halves, I'm sorry. How many twos? How many groups of twos would I have from these 15 pieces? right? So I get the 15 pieces, and then I say, how many groups of 2 do I have from these 15 pieces? So let's go on to the next page, page 11. All right, the numbering starts over again with example 1, example 2, and so on. All right, so on this page, again, we start very easy. Some of the latter problems are where I'm really going to show you support for the common denominator approach. Okay, so a whole serving is half a cookie. How many can I make from 2 cookies? All right, this is similar to ones we did on the back. All right, so measure off a half, measure off a half, all right, and I get 4. Okay, a serving is a half a cookie. How many servings do I get from 1 cookie? Okay, so again, I have 1 cookie, I'm sorry. I have 1 cookie, a serving is a half a cookie. Right, so I get 2 servings. Again, I'm measuring off. Okay. Now here, suppose a whole serving is a half a cookie. How many can I make from 3/4 of a cookie? So these first 2 examples were trying to set me up for these type of examples down below. So I have 3/4 of a cookie, and I need to know how many halves can I get out of 3/4 of a cookie. Okay, so that's what I'm looking for here. How many halves can I get out of 3/4 of a cookie? So I divide this up into quarters, and then I say, well, a half is 2/4. Okay? So if I were to get a common denominator, right, and think of this as 3/4 divided by 2/4, how many groups of 2 do I get out of 3? All right, and how many groups of 2 do I get out of 3? I get a full group of 2, so there's 1. And then this is half of my whole. So I get 1.5 servings. Okay. Number 4, the serving is a half. How many do I get out of 3/8 of a cookie? If the serving is half of a cookie, I'm not even going to get a whole serving, right? My answer is going to be less than 1. Okay. So what does a half look like? Like if I were to come over here, all right, split this into 8ths. Right? I have 3/8 of the cookie, and a serving is a half of a cookie. Okay, so in other words, a serving is 4 of those 8ths. So see how much it makes sense to write these with common denominators? Okay, and then I say, okay, I don't even have a full serving here, but what do I have? Right, I have these 3 pieces, and it takes 4 to make a serving. Right, so I have 3 pieces out of the 4 that I would need to make a serving. Okay, so pause the video and you try the next one. Get a common denominator and show how that makes sense. Okay, so I drew bigger diagrams on the next page, just so it's not so cumbersome to me for me to work with that little circle. I forgot to come to it for number 4, but we'll use this bigger diagram on number 5. Okay, so we have the problem, 5/8. We want to know how many halves we can get in that. So how many 4/8 can we get out of 5/8? Okay, so I have this much cookie, right? So how many halves can I get out of there, or how many groups of 4 can I make from 5? Right, so I have a full group of 4, and then I have one piece. Well, what do I need to have a whole? A whole is 4 pieces. When I have one piece, I have one piece out of the 4 that I needed to get 1 1/4. Okay, so let's move on to number 6. And actually, why don't you pause the video and try 6 and 7 on your own. Oh. But look how nice it works to get a common denominator. 2/4 divided by 3/4. Right? I have 2/4. I need 3/4 to make a serving, right? That would be a serving. Well, what part of the serving do I have? I have 2 pieces out of the 3 that I need to make a whole serving. Okay, and then down here, suppose, how many servings can I make from a half a cookie? Suppose a whole cookie is 5/8. Okay, well, I need 4/8, or I have 4/8. I need 5/8 to make a whole serving, right? So I have 4, if I took this 4 and tried to divide it up into how many 5s when I need 5s, right? I have 4 pieces out of the 5 that I need to make a serving.